Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and Toward Inclusive Excellence, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, U.S. Newcomers in Academic Libraries. What should we know? What can we do? Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speaker and to submit any comments. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the session, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you would like to be addressed. There is closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom panel of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program, and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version and to Anna's Padlet website on resources. Okay, now I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Fatima, who will talk more about Toward Inclusive Excellence and moderate today's discussion.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fatima. I'm the editor for TIE. Today's session is part of Toward Inclusive Excellence, or TIE as we call it for short, which is a content strand from Choice that explores issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion in and outside of the higher education community. We publish weekly blog posts, interviews, resource lists, and more. And if you would like to receive updates about new blog posts, webinars, and resource lists, please use the links in the chat to sign up for our newsletter and to read the TIE blog. And if you're interested in contributing to TIE, please feel free to email me directly, and my email should be dropped in the chat as well. So I'd now like to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Anna Ndumu is an assistant professor at the University of Maryland, College Park's College of Information Studies. She primarily researches and teaches on library services to immigrants, particularly Black diasporic immigrants, along with methods for promoting racial realism and representation in LIS. She directs the IMLS-funded LENA project, which has culminated in resources like the Improving Library Partnerships with Immigrants, a monthly immigration policy digest to help busy information professionals stay abreast of national legislation, as well as the Immigration and International Information Research Alliance, a lab that examines immigrant information behavior and designs toolkits for immigrant empowerment. Dr. Ndumu has chaired the ALA Serving Refugees, Immigrants, and Displaced Persons Subcommittee and leads within Reforma, the Black Caucus of the American Library Association, and other groups. She is the editor of Borders and Belonging, Critical Examinations of Library Approaches Toward Immigrants, and co-editor of The Black Librarian in America, Reflections, Resistance, and Reawakening. So first, before we get into the discussion, we have a couple poll questions for you all. So they should pop up on your screen shortly, and we'll give everyone a minute to respond to those. And I think after enough people have responded, the results will pop up on the screen. Okay, interesting. Thank you all for taking the time to participate. And so with that, I think we'll turn to the discussion. So Anna, thank you so much for being with us today. We're really happy to have you on this webinar. It's a really important topic. So to start, I wanted to refer to two recent articles that you had co-authored on the history of LIS service to immigrants and what we could be thinking about after the 2024 election. And hopefully the citations will appear in the chat as well. So to start, can you dive into how the field has both improved and stayed the same in terms of how we view immigrant narratives?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that I'm a little under the weather today. I see it all over my face. Usually, other folks, can't tell when a colleague is sick, but I'm under the weather. I have my tea here, and I hope that this talk does not disappoint. My goal was to also make it very practical and pragmatic. And I realized as we were talking through what this would be with Fatima and Sabrina and Ashley, thank you so much for the invitation as well. This is a topic that is so near and dear to me, as I'll touch on in a little bit. But hopefully, the Padlet will help steer our conversation. We felt very strongly that it should be dialogic. And so a presentation just doesn't cut it, right? So we're conversing about this topic, very timely and important topic, but you can sort of be looking at the toolkit at the same time. A lot of the resources that we mentioned are there, including the two readings that Fatima so kindly just asked about. And then on my positionality, I do identify as an immigrant. I spent my formative years here in Miami. I'm an Afro-Latina. My spouse is African by way of the UK. And so I understand so many intersections of immigration and immigrant identity. My first language was Spanish. I came here speaking no English, and yet that's not readily seen when people see me. And I often share, if you've been in one of my talks before, that I'm a Central American asylee, but I don't, perhaps to some folks, fit the template, right? So immigration is part of my personal and professional life, and several of you answered about 19% that this impacts your non-work life, your personal life as well. So thank you for being here. Um, Okay, so to the question, I think higher education is definitely not divorced from the immigration landscape, although it's removed. And that is because two things. First of all, immigration policy has largely centered around family reunification in the US, and this is after the 1964 U.S. Immigration and Naturalization or Nationality Act of 1964. And so after that, we really saw a shift, and we see that the library field actually parallels policy in very interesting ways. So that's the first article. And a lot of the services we know today started with immigrant outreach, children's story time. My team and I, and big up to the Lena Project team, we often talk about how language services, job placement, that was not a part of very elite establishment libraries at the turn of the 20th century. But when we had both the library profession being crystallized in New York and a lot of immigration in New York, we start to see outreach to immigrants and this Americanization ideal and campaign be a part of our literature and our professional, norms, how we teach future librarians, how we think about quote unquote the underserved. So immigrants were a big part of what we think about when we say diversity, even if we weren't using the term equity, diversity, and inclusion at the turn of the 20th century. And so the library literature for a very long time talked about how to make Americans, how to um, impress hygienic habits upon immigrants, and how to teach immigrants to have a stronger work ethic, right? Which is laughable by today's modern sensibilities, and it chafes against our sensibilities, actually. But that was what the literature said at the turn of the 19th century. And then you saw almost nothing between 1930 and 1950. And that's because there was essentially a stop on immigration. And so there was a quota-based system in place, and only certain kind of Europeans, anyone from virtually any other part of the world, was barred from the US. And then they started to shift as the civil rights movement took place and galvanized. And so immigration owes its successes, and policy changes owe their successes to the civil rights movement. We must acknowledge that. And then we start to see NALCOs, what we call the National Associations of Librarians of Color. These organizations, BCALA being the first one in 1970, then Reforma, Apala, which was a merger among two groups serving Asian librarians. And so we start to see these NALCOs sort of taking up the mantle of immigrant rights. And we also see the what is today, the Serving Refugees excuse me, the Social Responsibilities Roundtable and Emerit. However, it was left to these groups of color to do the work. And only after 100 years, we have ALA having an exclusive group for immigrant services. And this is a Serving Refugees, Immigrants, and Displaced Persons group. So what does this mean? I share all of this history to say that we really have done a few things. We've seen service to immigrants through a very public library lens, which is not bad because that's a holistic service model, a household, whole person service model. And a lot of families either migrate to reunite with family, people migrate to reunite with families or with family due to policies revolving around family reunification. So that's not bad. But what happens when you have created stock services around language, job placement, and citizenship preparation? Then the college campus and academic libraries may not really see their relationship and responsibility to outreach to immigrant heritage community members and campus affiliates. So this area has not really been explored in our library literature. I'm talking about immigrant heritage people on college campuses, but in the library, right? And so we haven't seen a lot done when it comes to first generation at the nexus of immigrant heritage in academic libraries. And there are a few people who have done great work. I list them in the reading list in the Padlet. But if you're interested in this area, we need a lot more research on many different kinds of immigrants in academic libraries.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share the second, a sliver of the second article. Basically, it's the same thread. We have underestimated some aspects of immigrant identity. Not everyone who has come here is impoverished from a low education or SES background or forcefully displaced. That is true. That is the immigrant experience, and the immigrant population has among them people who say this is their migration story, but we also have highly skilled immigrants who make their way on college campuses. You have international students who eventually become immigrants because that's a visitor visa, and
Mm-hmm.
then people transition. So we also need to understand that immigrants may actually, as far as their information behavior, express some things that we might underestimate, right? So aligning themselves, for example, with some ideals, ideologies, practices that might be counterproductive to immigrant integration, for example. We also contribute to the tech field. And we are also folks who may be anti-immigration, right? And this has a lot to do with ideas around Americanization too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
these are how those two articles kind of bookend how we have overlooked certain kind of immigrants and why we see immigrants as high need and may not always recognize their needs in academic libraries. When we frame immigrants in this way, we start to oversimplify
Mm-hmm.
immigrant on a college campus. And that was the point with the two papers. I want to also thank the co-author, Haley Park, who is doing amazing work. And I'll talk about some of her ideas, but she can express them much better. And she has some pieces coming out. So I just want to big her up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your last point segues really nicely into the next question. You sort of started building on this, but the tendency, whether intentional or unintentional, to kind of see all immigrants as a monolithic community when there are so many, in fact, differences between them and among them. So how can we better understand the differentiations among immigrants and new neighbors, and what are some differences among their academic library needs and experiences specifically? So just kind of building on your last point.
Yeah. And I use the term immigrant heritage for
Mm-hmm.
a few reasons. And that's because a person may be US born, but their experience is so international. There
Mm-hmm.
used to be a very hot button term for this, third culture kids, that's kind of phased out. Um, and so that idea that you are transnational, though, and your upbringing was very transnational and international, that's immigrant heritage. But that term also includes people who were not born in the US, but generation is so important to consider too when we think about our college students. I want to take a moment to say that there are a lot of folks who, when they registered, they noted that they're from associate granting institutions, or what we may call community colleges or colleges. And that's so important because that classification of institutions are doing a yeoman's or your person's job of onboarding or creating pathways and on-ramps to higher education for immigrant heritage students. And so we were pleasantly surprised when we saw that the representation for our attendees today largely came from that group. But there are also minority serving institutions, including historically Black colleges, which are now a great entry point for African and Afro-Caribbean heritage students. That's my background, actually. I worked at a historically Black college and university in Miami. I was the only Spanish-speaking librarian for a time, and we had students from Latin America, and we had students from the Caribbean and Africa. And so the diversity on HBCUs also can be overlooked sometimes. But then Hispanic serving institutions, which is another category of MSIs, these institutions, together with community colleges or associate granting colleges, are really the best and softest landing pads for immigrant heritage students. So thank you for being here today. But what I want to share is that generation matters. And if you have come here closer to birth, what we call 1.75 immigrant, that means that your experience may be a lot like a US born student. But if you migrated at 1.25, and that's the opposite, so you migrated closer to adulthood, then your experience may be more of your country of origin, and you may have to relearn or unlearn some things, or even learn the US educational system. That's going to inform your experience in an academic library and on campus. So we have to understand the nuances too. There's also refugee status and students, people who are classified as refugees. They may have gone through 2 or 3 countries before they've come here. They come here vetted. And so there's a lot of, at least for a few months, a lot of guardrails and support systems for this community, but they still need additional campus support. We have international faculty. Let's not also forget that a lot of our support staff and intrepid campus facilities and so many other kind of staff, they may themselves be immigrants. For example, here in UMD, at UMD, we have a lot of CHINV visa holders who are employed. What this is a sponsorship parole program that allowed Haitians, Cubans, Venezuelans, and Nicaraguans to come here. This has been a program, it's now terminated. It has been a program that has allowed 750,000 people to come to this country, right? So what happens when that program is effectively shut down? How do you show up for your staff members too? I think the answer to this is to understand that there's over 100, close to 200 different types of visas across 24 categories. And there's tools you can use to understand what are the differences between an international student and an immigrant heritage student. And so these tools can help you know that the information behavior is going to be different. International students are seen as people who leave information saturated locations and come into information saturated locations, and they have usually a whole center on campus to help them. But the reason why we haven't really seen attention to immigrants in libraries, again, is because when we think about these stock services, language, job placement, and career services, or, well, which is job placement, but naturalization, there are already centers on campus focusing on this, that focus on making sure people take the TOEFL test, that focus on documentation, even if you have undocumented students on campus, which I'll talk about undocumented students and the situation impacting them now. But to close and to summarize, there's 3 things that are really happening right now on college campuses. 2 of them are new. One of them has been happening for decades, and these impact are students, faculty, and staff who are immigrant heritage. Number one, there's a perception of the abuse of the visitor or international student visa. And this is why the Trump administration is going after certain colleges, Columbia, for international students who, quote unquote, dare to protest and express First Amendment US rights, freedom of speech. So there's debate actually on whether this includes and protects international visitors. Can they exercise this? So the revocation and the termination, many of them through appeal, and the Supreme Court upheld that they have a right to free speech, and then these international students were allowed to stay. But the weaponization of the international student visa is one trend. And so we see a lot of campuses seeing an engineered backlog, and the President's Alliance for Higher Education and Immigration is tracking this. But then also people visiting and not being able to return. So once you're out, don't come back. And a lot of campuses are telling people, try not to travel back home, right? Because you may get stuck there. And then ICE on college campuses. What do you do when there's a presence of ICE on campus? This can happen in two ways. This can be through sponsored research and other kind of partnerships, or it can be actually ICE raids on campus. There's been college campuses where ICE has come and, for example, picked up someone at a construction site on campus. So what happens? How do you protect our community members on campus? How can the library be a safe space? We share a little bit of that in a toolkit, and I'll talk a little bit about how to signal that the library is a safe space. In addition to that, another thing is that this idea that somehow, and this is longstanding, this is a third one, immigrants take away from what's rightfully American or for US born citizens. And this idea that dreamers and what used to be documented, which as time goes by, because DACA was instituted in 2012, so there's fewer and fewer DACA recipients now as we go on. But undocumented students have an in-state tuition in states like Maryland and California. So there's the revocation of that, and also access to funding. Some people believe that these EDI measures um, disadvantage US born students. And these are questions of affirmative action or equalizing higher education that have been debated long before the current administration's return. But the first two are different. The perception of international students just to some people, for all intents and purposes, saying, shut up, you're a visitor, right? Know your place, you're just visiting. So this idea that people should behave in a certain way if they're on an international or H-1B visa. And as free speech maximalists in the LIS field, and also privacy maximalists, we're against that. And the second part is ICE on our campuses. Florida International University, for example, contracts its police to ICE, right? It's campus police. So I'll wrap up by saying what we can do is, at a minimum, educate ourselves, and then also support the student groups that are supporting immigrants. And then recognizing that you may need to acknowledge or be sensitive to multilingual needs, students in distress, and also students who are being or acting as a liaison for their families, especially undocumented students.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, all great points. And also, as you mentioned, there might be beyond just the students, faculty and staff who are also being impacted by these harsher immigration policies now. And so thinking about that, are there any positive examples or case studies you know of of universities that have established strong partnerships with their international students and faculty that we might share with the audience?
From the library side or just as a whole?
I would say definitely if you know of any from the library side, that would be especially helpful. And if there's too few examples of that, then as on the whole, anything that would be worth mentioning.
There is a colleague, Natalia Bowden, and this is, her work is incredible. She works with refugees in South Carolina. I don't exactly remember the institution. I can look this up. This is kind of on the fly, but uh, just that town and gown relationship and
Hmm.
serving refugees on campus. I've seen a model of refugees being invited to live on campus. We've had that here. And so there are some campuses that allow a family, an Afghan family, to live in a dormitory.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I've also seen where, and I believe that's one of the articles, Natalia's work. I've also, I think that partnering with your public library is another idea.
Hmm.
If there's already a framework or if there's work already being done, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But what
Hmm.
you could do is extend or deepen and, help the scope, right? So if your public library system is feeling maxed out, um, perhaps you can forge a partnership or even your state library system, which is something we're trying to do here. So, from the University of Maryland to the Maryland Library Association to the Maryland State Library Agency, how
Hmm.
can we create a trifecta? And that's another potential model and framework that we are testing.
Hmm.
So, in that way, we make sure that immigrant needs are recognized in school libraries, academic libraries, public libraries. The work shouldn't just be left to public libraries.
Hmm.
As someone who comes from an academic librarian background, I think that it was so easy to underestimate, and there was such a muted point that a lot of these students came from systems where you have a primary and secondary education in the sense that they don't know what a middle school here is, and that's okay. All right. So, this is most of the world follows the primary and secondary AAOO and Europeanized system, and we have a different model here. So, again, you can partner with your structures on campus. If there's conversation cafes happening on campus, if there's an entity for undocumented students, make sure that the library is reaching across. If you have an EDI officer, which now so many positions, EDI, library, academic library positions are being sliced. However, you can forge this connection. You can also invite immigrant heritage people to enjoy some of the things we have on our academic, on our campuses, but especially in our academic libraries. This could be your collections, information literacy, to the extent that you can. I'll talk later about the risks of doing this and how to protect yourself because
Hmm.
that there might be pushback.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, great point. And also thinking about, all these immigrant or immigrant heritage students or faculty or administrators on our campus, I think the notion of privacy and surveillance also comes up a lot because we know that immigrants or immigrant heritage students and newcomers are especially vulnerable to being surveilled. So what does this mean specifically for academic libraries? Like, how does that come into play a bit? I know um, there's been some talk about certain vendors that maybe libraries use that are also participating in sort of surveillance systems that might impact the immigrant students or refugee students. Um, what should we tell our impacted campus members about the information tools that they're using, and also how maybe can we support them?
Yeah, let me first start by saying that this where I have to say there's people focusing exclusively on this privacy in libraries, surveillance in libraries, and big data in libraries. So I want to give them a shout out. And Haley Park is one of the people that's doing a great job of looking at privacy and immigrants in libraries. So usually the immigrant part is missing, but she fills this gap so nicely. There's also Sarah Lambden, who was an academic librarian in New York, law librarian as well. And I love that she made a splash in the big data and data. Her book is called Data Cartels. I list that also in the toolkit. And so if you don't know her story, she was kind of trolled and bullied by Thomson Reuters when she found out that LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters entered the criminalization space and was a major actor and partner with ICE. This was around 2015. She stumbled across this. She wrote a blog post for the American Association of Law Librarians, AALL. And so she posts this blog, and then immediately Thomson Reuters tells her institution, or excuse me, the organization, shut it down, take that down, or else. And so then she saw the power of our database vendors, and it begs the question, what is our responsibility as licensees? And as Sarah so nicely articulates in Data Cartels, what happens when we're conflicted and we have this fiduciary and statutory responsibility to library users? And are they expecting, and it stands to reason that library vendors, if they're tracking publicly available utility and other information, social media, what happens with the data from their own licensees? And it's not just librarians that have this conflict of interest now, it's law firms. If you're representing the interests of your clients, should you be using LexisNexis, who works for ICE? Um, and so Sarah writes about how this works and how these monopolies are really the dominance now is even worse than when she wrote Data Cartels, to be honest with you. And I would love to see a Data Cartels too under the second Trump administration. But again, our database vendors are moving into this big data space as big juggernauts. And I think that again, we have to ask, how can we push back? We see how expensive it was to combat Elsevier, and the California system was very brave, but it was also expensive. You had to ILL everything. When you cut the cord from Elsevier, you need a whole lot more staff to ILL everything. And so, how can we effectively protest? And students at NYU and so many other institutions are saying this is not right. We're
Mhm.
using your databases. This is not what we expect as users. There's other people talking about the thinking behind analytics and algorithms. And a dear colleague here at the University of Maryland, Rachel Gammons, looks at neoliberalism. And what I mean by neoliberalism, because it's used in many ways, is this idea of bootstrap upward mobility, performance, and personal responsibility, the onus on the individual. And so this is already built into our learning management systems. It's built into our library management systems. These analytics that say how people use it, how much time they spend on the system, it's really tracking. So we've come to depend on a lot of this tracking already. It's in stealth in our libraries. And so we have, in a lot of ways, bought into this big data environment, and AI only compounds that. This has long existed in the immigration space. And in fact, the Obama administration earned its reputation as, the administration with the most deportations. And in fact, this administration is not even on track to match it yet. They're trying. However, the introduction of risk management, actuaries, and all of these AI systems, there's so many different kinds of AI, generative, assistive, but risk management and predictive AI was introduced to immigration under Obama. Now it's to objectify and to make the process, quote unquote, more fair. What do we know now about algorithmic bias? So, what happened is that deportation disproportionately affected certain people. What does this have to do with academic libraries? Well, we saw a lot more international visas being denied for applicants from Central and South America, the Caribbean, and Africa, because of, again, the introduction of these software. And the other part to that, pardon the siren behind me if you can hear it. The other part to that is that we saw a racial bias as well. So while Black diasporic immigrants are only 10% of those who are undocumented, they make up close to 30% of those who are deported, right? So that is a bias and disproportionate. And so what I'm saying is that big data is not new to libraries, especially not academic libraries. And then also predictive technologies. We know about this. This is our This is our wheelhouse. So being educated on this and being knowledgeable of what happens when we overuse analytics and we quantify everything. Kathy O'Neill talks about this so nicely in a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. And this was actually a campus reading first year selection on our, like maybe 4 years ago. And it's the tyranny of the quantified, this pull to datafy everything. Are we opting into that? And these are little ways that we can resist this. Privacy and surveillance works in much the same way. When we opt in or we normalize certain behaviors, then we are then co-signing into the state sanctioned, data driven surveillance kind of environment that we have now. That is what immigrants are contending with now. The more that you try to become more integrated and legitimized, the more trackable you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what's happening with international students too. Do you want to be a ghost? Do you want a ghost once you get here? Do you want to shut up international faculty? Even our staff on campus want, there's a lot of good reasons too to stay in the analog. But how do we, as academic librarians, engender trust?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point to think on. And before we move into the Q&A section with the audience, I also wanted to ask you, for those who want to get active in this landscape or contribute to change, what are some resources they might turn to get started? And maybe this is also a good opportunity to focus or highlight the Padlet.
Yeah, so the toolkit, especially, I think maybe two of the columns list a lot of library resources for immigrants. It is again a lot. It's kind of public library centric.
Mhm.
But if you are interested in adopting this to academic libraries, we need that. I want to highlight the LENA project, Libraries Integration in New Americans project. We offer two things: a policy digest for information professionals. If you're overwhelmed by all of this change, we curate and cull and we go through the junk for you too, and sort of synthesize it into a two-pager every month where we say this is for librarians, archivists, and museums to museum curators to keep up and how this impacts libraries. And it's interesting because we are we're impacted threefold, right? So if you're if you're thinking about immigration, if you're thinking about higher education, if you're thinking about EDI, you're stressed right now. And that's what's happening. This
Mhm.
is compounded. Issues are compounded. So this touches EDI on campus, this touches freedom of speech on campus, this touches immigrants, and higher ed is under attack. And so there's so many angles. Our funding got cut, for example, IMLS. We see the Library of Congress, which is our de facto national library. We don't have one, but if we did, that would be it, under attack. So
Mhm.
these symbolisms, there's a chilling effect, but then also there's a lot of uncertainty in the field. So if you want to get started,
Mhm.
ALA, support ALA, join ALA. I never used to say that, but now I see the advocacy purpose of ALA. And I keep telling people, other nations, I'm from Nicaragua, okay? So your to have an entity that pushes back against the federal government instead of the National Library creating all of your metadata and accrediting schools and also serving the interests of legislators. No, ALA is independent. So we can speak back, push back, speak truth to power, support ALA. But I realize that ALA is hard to feel, it's difficult to feel community sometimes, right? So there's other groups such as Library Freedom Project doing great work around privacy. We also have a listserv if you wanted to take part. There's a Serving Refugees, Immigrants, and Displaced Persons Committee through ALA 100 years after. We now have a group for immigrant interests within ALA. We did not have that for 100 years. It was sundown around 1914. And so we have that again. And then Reforma and some of the NALCOs are also assisting. So join these organizations. I realized that associations may not be the only or best place to enact change. However, in this moment, we really need coalition building. If not, contribute to every library. You can, at a minimum, stay abreast on who's on your campus, ask student services what is the distribution and representation of demographics on immigrant and immigrant heritage people on your campus. At a minimum, you can just educate yourself. If you want to create new toolkits, we're adopting a toolkit that we're giving to immigrant activists. We're saying this is what information is, this is consumer fraud, this is what surveillance is, this is how you can practice digital hygiene, and we're giving that out in multiple languages, and it'll be ready in the fall. We also provide a course for for library workers. So there's multiple ways. I list them on the Padlet
Hmm.
so that you're not overwhelmed. But there are groups that are thinking about the carceral state, deportation, detention, and there's find your what aspect of serving immigrants are you drawn to, and then find a group. I'm happy to answer questions on who might be the best group.
Hmm.
Staying abreast Chronicle of Higher Education is also great, and there's a lot of immigration trackers too. So stay abreast on your particular state because it is variant by state and by region. So some states are sanctuary states, and we know that. So find out what's going on at your level.
Hmm. Hmm. And are there any readings that you might recommend, a book or an article, maybe like just a couple
Mhm.
um, that are useful right now?
Yeah, and so many. Well, I try to not overwhelm, especially
Hmm.
its reading list, but right now I'm reading a book by Dr. Melissa Villa-Nicholas. And I have it here, it's Data Borders, how the Silicon Valley industry is building, actually, how Silicon Valley is building an industry around immigrants. I'm very interested in her work. Like I said, immigrants contribute to AI and building these tech tools, and then these tech tools are then used against immigrants' interests.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that paradox is something that she brings to the fore. So that's what I'm going to be sitting down with for the rest of the summer. I
Nice.
highly recommend readings that help us recognize what our place is as
Hmm.
education professionals. There's a lot we can say. Information literacy is so needed in this moment.
Hmm. Absolutely. So I think just right before we turn to the questions, I just also wanted to do a little call out or call to action. If anybody who's attending is interested in continuing this conversation and might want to even write a piece for Thai, feel free to reach out to me. My email's in the chat, and we'll also share 2 links in the chat to Thai articles that examine international students and their relationship to the academic library as sort of inspiration. But yeah, thank you so much for all those great points, Anna. We have so many questions in the chat. So I'll just jump in and we'll get through as many as we can before the end of the session at 3. Okay, so first up, we have a question from Jose Luis Quintero that says, in what ways can academic and public libraries in the United States more intentionally recognize and integrate the erased or overlooked cultural contributions of Afro-Hispanic communities? And how might this inclusion enrich the broader landscape of scholarship, cultural literacy, and community engagement?
Mhm. Thank you so much for that question. As an Afro-Latina, it hits close to home. I do some work around, usually I do comprehensive work that captures Black identifying immigrants. However, a doctoral student, Manuel Mendez, not only does he run the DC Afro Latino Caucus and he's a part of the Afro Latino Forum, a big, big think tank. Um, but he also is looking at the legacy of Arturo Schomburg to the US, and a famous, famous librarian whose works and his collection is now a part of the New York Public Library. And so we also have a support group within called the Reforma Afro-Latine Affinity Group. And those of us who identify as Black and Latinos, and people who are allies, come. And in the fall, we'll be having some exciting talks, and we're also gearing up for the 100th anniversary of the Schomburg Research Center. So there is a group. I will find the website and email address and put it in the chat box. But we need more research. We need more research at a lot of different intersections. We need underrepresented in research Asian groups. This is Vietnamese, Laotians, and Thai immigrants are very understudied. We need Francophone Caribbean research,
Mm,
Haitian community members, which I have a partnership going now and helping to teach information literacy to, or actually develop information literacy tools alongside a Haitian community and children who don't see themselves in books in Haitian Creole, not French, and also have to dispel stupid stereotypes like Haitians eat cats. And so we're teaching kids how to empower themselves against this demagoguery. So we need a lot of different intersections, including but not limited to Afro-Hispanic information behavior and research habit or library habits.
mhm, mhm. Um, Thank you so much. Next question from Susie Bahman-Yar, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Martin Luther King Jr. Library in San Jose, California is a combined public library and university library in a very diverse area with over 100 languages and dialects spoken. Community members can borrow books from the university collection, and university campus members can borrow books from the public library's holdings. Oh, okay, so more of a comment than a question, but that's a really interesting example of what you were mentioning earlier of like a public academic library partnership. I mean, it's a more specific example, but it might generate some inspiration for others. So I'll go on to the next question. From Yulia Leff, you mentioned a strong representation of community college librarians in the session. Community colleges often serve a large population of ESL students. Do you have recommendations for supporting this particular group of students? Also, have you encountered resistance to supporting this population of students because they are not taking credit bearing courses?
Mhm. And within ACRL, there is I think it's still called a community college group. But more than that, there's usually great threads, sometimes on ALA Connect, but connect with people who are serving the students at your type of campus. That's a great question. A lot of times, English language learning students, ELIs, they're called in the research, they feel abused because they have to take these remedial courses over and over again until they can pass the TOEFL. So this may be a barrier to persisting with their college education, and the library can partner with advising, academic library, or excuse me, academic affairs to see how they can support. Again, conversation clubs, also, reading clubs. And there's a researcher, Karen Dolly, who does great way research on English fluency just by reading out loud, reading in your language, then reading the same book in English, fluency through the library, through self-determination, but not in the neoliberal kind of way, determining how you want to learn English. So there's work, and there's also a group, a thread that you can join to ask, how can we better serve ESL students, especially those who continue to take these classes? Sometimes they're not taking credit bearing classes, they're just taking quote unquote remedial and classes, which can be disappointing if you take it 4 semesters straight and so again, it's a very, very specific question. And I think if you join RUSA, not RUSA, excuse me, I'll find a group and I'll post it on the Padlet too. But these communities are answering these same questions and they're cross-pollinating as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there's another question, Anna, about the immigration, the premise that white Europeans were not denied entry to the United States during the 1930s to the 1950s. This is from Ivan Friedman. He says many potential Jewish immigrants were denied entry to the U.S. During the 1930s and leading to the Holocausts. And he's asking, why is the Jewish experience so often ignored in the DEI conversation? If you have a response to that.
I do. Thank you so much, and I understand your frustration. So thank you for that very generous comment. In our course that we've developed, the Improving Library Partnerships with Immigrants course, we actually expressly say the Jewish Librarian Association is recognized and is encapsulated in the NALCOs, National Association of Librarians of Color. So we acknowledge that that's an important part of our field and an important community within our field. And so if you ever take our course, we spotlight the Jewish Librarians Association. Very important group. In addition to that, what I said is between 1930 and 1950, there was a quota barring so many people and only allowing entry to certain specific European nations and certain kind and category classification of European immigrants. So you're right, and we're making the same point. So it still barred certain Europeans, and it still said we are only permitting those who we feel are assimilable. So there's the innuendos of a white, Anglophone, monocultural American ideal that's still very prevalent today. This template of who gets to be, or this idea of who encapsulates a qualified American immigrant, giving refugee status to certain kinds of African immigrants, and then placing other types of African immigrants on the bar list. So this is again falling into this Americanization idea, but then also an idea within population research that says you can assimilate up and assimilate down. Assimilating up being that you are assimilating to traditional white Anglophone society. So you and I agree on that. Between the 1930s and 50s, there was an immigration quota system that all but stopped immigration, and it was not lifted until Kennedy and until the 1960s. And yes, the Jewish community was very, very subjugated as a result and denied entry, and so many could have been saved. Thank you for that generous question. And you can read the article as well when we unpack the quota-based system and what it did for librarianship.
And we have another question from Jose. How does the fear of speaking one's native language, such as Spanish, within academic library environments reflect broader challenges of identity and belonging for immigrant librarians? And what steps can institutions take to create spaces where linguistic and cultural heritage are seen as strengths rather than liabilities?
And again, on academic campuses, this is kind of tricky, right? Because we teach in English, we learn in English, there's an expectation that you need to be fluent in English. So multilingualism is not usually a priority area on our college campuses. Our signage is all in English, and there's this expectation that you have to have English mastery. But within the field, there's been work to get extra pay and an additional, salary bonus for staff who are multilingual. Maybe that's something you want to advocate for. You can also have affinity groups for students or for staff. So, and I also want to say that within our field, if you look at some of our publications, but also presentations, there's a problematic conflation. I can say this as a Latina between Latinidad and immigration. Not all Hispanics or Latinos, which includes Brazilians and Lusophone speakers, but not all Latinos are immigrants, and not all immigrants are Latinos. There's often that conflation. However, since you mentioned Spanish, I think that a lot of there's an advocacy to get bilingual pay for staff and to celebrate bilingualism among library staff. You want to look at the work of Denise Solis. Denise Solis.
Thank you so much, Anna, for that. There's a question from Lily Hunter. She says, I'm interested in the research regarding academic libraries and immigration, but who would I speak to regarding getting access to research already done or learning what research still needs to be done? Since I know you had mentioned there's some very understudied areas, where might someone, I guess, turn to kind of at least even figure out what lacunas they might fill?
Yeah, I have broad articles. However, I would recommend that you start to use, well, there's some really good tools, and AI has already been a part of JSTOR, for example, for 10 years, but there's some really good AI tools. It's not generative, this is assistive AI technology, which is assisting us sometimes with our searching. Semantic Scholar can help. Um, and if you want, you can reach out and tell me what you're interested in and what population you might be interested in looking at. I can't say what gaps we have. I know that we are not looking at pockets that, again, are not from highly populated countries, but then international students who are well represented in academia. So a lot of our international student literature in LIS focuses on the Korean community, which has a beautiful pathway here. Indian international students, and by the way, international students are usually concentrated at grad school level. Um, and so we have those communities represented because they make up a huge proportion, right? And Chinese international students as well. But we haven't looked at other intersections because they may not be represented in higher education. And that's the point I make. As far as specific nationalities, we would have to do a literature synthesis and a literature map to see who has been recognized and who has not. I can tell you that Black diasporic immigrants have only been written about within the last 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
especially African students on university campuses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then there's a question, kind of two-part from Vanessa Jones. Do you have information on immigration and financial aid / enrollment, which I'm guessing is also, where could you turn to on your campus, I guess, to learn that? And then the second part is ICE allowed on campuses? So I guess that would vary from campus to campus, and, where might someone working in the library turn to on their campus to even learn that?
This is a great place to end on. Thank you, because I don't think I unpacked it enough. First of all, we want to, yes, ICE has come to campuses. There's several examples. Like I said, construction sites, but also um, unofficial campus spaces like across the street. And then some universities are adjacent to very working class communities, right? And so this impacts your campus because it's adjacent to it. That's the case in many of the Eastern Corridor and the Mid-Atlantic states that are seeing a lot of raids. Um, the other part is that we want to label our spaces on campus. You may have gotten this directive already, but there's public spaces and there's private spaces. You can take students and staff and faculty who are at risk. You can also have a code word, right? So la migra, most people in the DMV know that you're signaling ICE is nearby when you say la migra. But you can also label where in your facility is it safe to take a community member. Never ask anyone their status, right? But if they divulge, take them into those recognized and designated safe spaces that are private. So this is not actually a bathroom. This is not a conference room. It can be an office. It can be a cutoff suite, and ICE may not be able to go in there. These and other Know Your Rights tips are in the toolkit, and it's very important. But I want to touch on Mind of Five. I'll correct that link.
Mm.
But Mind of Five is a tool created for librarians and information professionals on how to protect vulnerable status immigrants' information. Again, don't ask status ever, but then don't assume status either. And then when you see that someone needs help, take them to places that may be safe and make sure you know who to call on campus. There may be a specific unit within campus police, or if it's not campus police, and there's a lot of reasons not to trust campus police, some campuses are sympathetic to their undocumented students. So one way that campuses have been protecting is to make a circle around the person who's at risk, holding hands and protecting the person who's at risk. If you are fearing for your job and how much risk you want to take, there's communities on a lot of campus who are ready to be dispatched if ICE comes to campus. Find out who that group is because they're already mobilized. They usually have a signal thread, a WhatsApp thread to be on the move as soon as someone sees ICE. And so you can be an ally If you're new to this space and don't know what your role is, please find out where the safe rooms are, label those rooms, and you can also get a badge through our ILPI course that says, I am an immigrant outreach specialist. That signals to people that you are a safe person, that you can be trusted with immigration information. You may not have the answers, but you can punt people to the resources. So please look at our Lena site so you can get a badge through our course. This will be offered again in the fall. We'll have a new cohort so that you can be an immigrant space, or sorry, a specialist and a safe person in a safe space.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. And it looks like it's 3 o'clock now, so I guess it's time to, wrap it up. Thank you everyone for coming today.
Yeah, I'll just say thanks so much to Anna for taking the time to speak with us today, and thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Ty with a link to the recording and Anna's Padlet. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you found this session informative and helpful, and we hope to see you again soon on another webinar.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.